It's Gavi.
Natalie Gavi, welcome to Life After Impact, the Concussion Recovery Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to talking to you because you have worked with patients with traumatic brain injuries across the spectrum from ICU level injuries to athletes with sports-related concussions. So give me a little bit of your background and talk about your journey through that evolution of your career.
Yeah. So I've always been very interested in neurology and the impact that nutrition has on brain health and recovery and treatment in a variety of neurological conditions. I attended grad school at Oregon Health and Science University and completed my thesis on the ketogenic diet in pediatric patients with intractable epilepsy. So out the gate, very interested in nutrition from that perspective. I then started working as an inpatient dietitian, was in multiple hospitals, spent quite a bit of time in the neuro ICU, so provided direct care, tube feeding, alternative forms of nutrition support to help patients in that acute recovery period following moderate and severe TBI. I was really interested in pursuing the ketogenic diet as a career, and there was an opportunity to um, just temporarily serve as a relief dietitian in UCLA's ketogenic diet program. So I jumped on that, and as soon as that position, was concluded, there was an opening at UCLA's BrainSPORT program. They were looking for a dietitian, and that just felt like just a very natural direction for me to go at the point. I just personally have a background in sports and including martial arts and horseback riding. So both sports that have quite a bit. We see quite a bit of sports-related concussions there, and severe, moderate to severe TBIs. So was just really interested in exploring that further. Um, and yeah, I continue to provide support in my private practice and helping clients from a spectrum of concussion recovery, just people interested in brain health in general, and I'm still working on that to this day. So,
hmm Yeah, and you are speaking at the Love Your Brain Summit as well. That's coming up in March, and so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show too, just to help kind of introduce people to you. And if they want to learn more, they can check out your talk at the summit, and I'll provide links to the show notes. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was the fact that, anybody who studies brain injuries, we all learn about the metabolic crisis that happens within
mhm.
the first 7 to 10 days following an injury. We learn the science of this energy mismatch in the body where the brain needs more energy at a time when it is not able to get it because of the brain injury. And yet nobody really talks about nutrition. We talk about this energy crisis in the brain, but I don't ever hear people
Mhm.
talking about what should you be eating and what should you be paying attention to during the first 7 to 10 days after a concussion. So I thought, let's maybe start there and talk about this kind of acute stage and then move on to more of the kind of long-term issues with energy metabolism that can happen.
Yeah, that's a great question. And unfortunately, there isn't a ton of research around, the practical nutritional interventions that we can incorporate in that time frame. So a lot of my work focuses on some of the symptom management that addresses the symptoms that we see. So a lot of the clients and patients I've worked with in that acute phase experience loss of appetite. They may experience, post-concussive headache, um, just being disrupted and dysregulated, pulled out of their schedule and routine. And so, from a practical standpoint, it's really just focusing on the just getting food in whatever way is feasible for that person. Um, Ideally, we're focusing less on calorically rich foods. That is something that we focus on in more moderate to severe traumatic brain injuries, where we do see a significant increase in the total energy demand. In the post concussion, it's more of a functional injury rather than structural. And so, because of that, we're focusing on some of the oxidative stress that we see, combating that oxidative stress. So, really supporting the brain with antioxidant rich foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. There's been some interesting research looking at the connection between the gut and the brain and how the gut microbiome and the lining of the gut can also get disrupted following injury in that acute phase. And so providing the gut with fermented foods, which help increase, certain metabolites that can then cross the blood-brain barrier to support the brain. Um, and a lot of anti-inflammatory foods as well. Things like olive oil, nuts and seeds, and really focusing on, kind of an add-in approach. But um, just a lot of, again, just can we eat whatever's feasible, especially if somebody just doesn't have the appetite, and then focusing on adding in some of those antioxidant and inflammatory rich foods.
Mhm. Yeah. And I know too with the, like the Mediterranean diet, I think one of the things that's so powerful about that is the combination of both the healthy essential fatty acids from fish, but also pairing that with all the polyphenols that you get with olive oil and all of these brightly colored fruits and vegetables. So are you also really encouraging people to get those healthy omega-3 fatty acids in their diet with a lot of those polyphenols as well?
Absolutely. Yes. And there's some evidence that looks at higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids. So not just encouraging, intake of fatty fish and polyphenol rich foods, but potentially increasing the dose of omega-3 fatty acids, looking at what somebody's already doing. But absolutely, I will use the Mediterranean diet as a foundation, and I'll talk about this more in the summit. But the diet that has been shown to be really beneficial for just overall brain health is the MIND diet, and it's a combination of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. Um, Following, especially a sports-related concussion, I definitely lean more toward that Mediterranean diet with versus the DASH or the MIND diet that can be a little bit more restrictive. Um, so yes, absolutely, strong emphasis on polyphenols, olive oil, fatty fish, omega threes.
Mhm.
uh, I'll conduct a full nutritional assessment, and depending on somebody's, again, symptoms, I'll looking at the relationship with food as well. If somebody is already in maybe a more restrictive mindset, or there's any stress or concern around food, I don't want to layer an additional area of stress. So really focusing more on what they have access to, what the relationship with food looks like, and just finding ways to add in those really supportive foods and nutrients, versus maybe restricting or limiting other things.
Mhm. What would you say is a common nutrition mistake that you see people in this, recovering from a traumatic brain injury or a concussion doing?
Yeah. Um, I see I would say an overuse of supplements. Supplements themselves, I think, can be wonderful, but there's a lot of misunderstanding around the types, the forms, the doses, and supplements themselves are not FDA. They're not FDA regulated, and so the unless they're third party certified by specific third party organizations, there's no way to guarantee the safety, efficacy, whether the dose matches what's in the bottle. And so, I would say definitely meeting with a dietitian would be helpful, and or, a healthcare provider who can provide recommendations that, supplement recommendations that are, again, third party certified, and supplements that actually have some evidence to support any form of recovery following concussion or, brain health symptom management.
Mhm. Yeah, I absolutely agree. There's just so many brands out there that are just like their main goal is simply to just make money in the
Yep.
market. And I have to tell people all the time, bring everything in so I can take a look at what you're doing. And I just feel like
Yes.
so often 80% of it's probably not doing much for them. Which
Yeah.
is, again, a lot of people are trying to do their own research, right? They're trying to help
Yeah.
themselves. And sometimes it's hard to say, like, I get that you're trying to do everything you can to recover here, but sometimes these things aren't moving the needle as much
Mhm.
as you maybe would hope they would. And I think that's where just the actual food that we're eating plays such a huge role. Now, the
Absolutely.
ketogenic diet is a very difficult one to follow. It's very restrictive. Are there some
Mhm.
cases where you're still recommending that for people, maybe not on the severe TBI side, but in other cases?
I have yet to have recommended the ketogenic diet for anyone who hasn't experienced either epilepsy or a more severe brain injury. Um, like you said, it's incredibly restrictive, could be very difficult to follow. Um, and it really needs to be treated like medicine in order for it to be effective, which is incredibly, incredibly time intensive and has, quite the learning curve. Um, and we just don't quite have the research as well to support the use of the ketogenic diet in concussion recovery. There's a pilot study um, that did look at its use. I don't believe any other studies have looked at the ketogenic diet in concussion recovery, but one of the things that it also limits is, all of those polyphenol rich, oils and fruits and vegetables, and that in and of itself could potentially impact healing.
I think the other thing I see with my patients is that maybe if before their concussion they didn't have any issue with skipping meals or going for, 6 to 8 hours without eating, all of a sudden they get the brain injury and now they're maybe having a hard time putting two and two together that their brain is maybe struggling to function if they do skip breakfast or skip lunch. And so
Mhm.
sometimes they're not making that connection that after the concussion, they maybe need to be more aware of eating at regular time points. Do you see that often?
Yeah, I'll see that, and I'll see kind of the opposite, especially among athletes who had a more regimented schedule and, had their set times, to eat before between practices, et cetera. And then without the schedule, they'll forget to eat. So I've seen, kind of both ends of the spectrum there. And, I think just that consistent eating, trying not to go more than 5 hours without eating has been really helpful for so many of my clients after concussion and just in general to support cognitive functioning. The brain is our body's most metabolically active organ. It needs that consistent source of energy and nutrition. And so, um, yeah, creating structure and kind of a flexible meal plan, if you will, is something that's been quite helpful for a lot of my clients.
hmm do you have a top 10 list of maybe foods that have the most either research behind them as far as being brain friendly and brain supportive?
Yeah. So definitely, and this is where, again, I'll talk about it more in the summit, but the mind diet is really interesting because it essentially takes, the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet, which is the DASH diet was specifically created to reduce the risk of hypertension. So focuses more on sodium reduction. But the mind diet specifically focused on adding in leafy greens and berries. So leafy greens, berries, those both have research to support just brain health. Olive oil has lots of research to support its benefit in long-term brain health. Walnuts, again, fermented foods, so things like yogurt, kimchi, kefir, anything to support the gut, and then whole grains because whole grains, have fiber that help to act as fuel for those probiotics that give us those, brain healthy metabolites that we need, um, uh, uh, as well as lots of other benefits. But I don't know exactly how many that is, but that's kind of and fatty
Yeah.
fish. Yes, those are, kind of my core things that I'll recommend.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And, you mentioned that you're an equestrian. I don't know if I've ever met an equestrian who hasn't fallen off their horse. And so, yeah, concussions
Yep.
are very common in that sport. Do you yourself follow certain diets just to, like, I mean, have you had concussions? Have you had to deal with that?
I am almost certain that I've had concussions, never diagnosed. Um, I also grew up doing judo and like thinking back to like the splitting headaches that I get after, taking a bad fall or, after falling off a horse and, not quite feeling, quite right. So I for sure, I think have experienced them, never diagnosed.
Yeah.
But I would say I follow for the most part like a Mediterranean way of eating and combining that with intuitive eating. So, honoring hunger cues, honoring fullness cues, knowing when I can't rely on my cues to eat and needing to kind of override that to give myself that consistency and balance throughout the day. And also just enjoying food that I enjoy because stressing about food doesn't help either. So just a balanced way of eating, prioritizing a lot of those um, brain healthy foods as well.
Hmm. Yeah. So you've never had a concussion where you couldn't walk away from it, but you've had those falls and injuries where you were like looking back, oh yeah, that could have probably been a concussion.
Yes. So important, just thinking about that to, support my brain while I can. And, of course we can't go backwards. And I wish I could go back with all the knowledge that I have and, um, you know, incorporate the supplements, incorporate, the foods in the way that I encourage my clients to, but it's never too late to start doing that.
Exactly. Well, and food is one of the things that we can control, that we do have
Hmm.
control over. And so I think for people who do want to feel empowered, like they're doing something to help in their recovery, but also just for promoting general brain health, that's huge. S- So
Yes.
you mentioned, obviously there's a lot of supplements that are out there, and different, obviously huge changes, differences in quality from company to company. And
Mhm.
so oftentimes, people are taking things that maybe are not beneficial for them. Are there outside of, say, a fish oil supplement, are there certain things, and we won't like, without getting into brands or like the quality issue, are there certain things that you see as maybe more important? I know lots of women are deficient in magnesium. It's hard to get a lot of magnesium in the diet these days. So are there certain nutrients that you think are more important than others?
Yeah. I will often recommend magnesium, either magnesium glycinate or magnesium threonate. Those are the more bioavailable forms. Magnesium threonate is the form that is able to better cross the blood-brain barriers. So, especially for just supporting brain health, relaxation, that is the form that I'll recommend. For anybody who experiences like migraines, magnesium and riboflavin are the two that I will very routinely recommend. It's, overall safe. So higher doses of both. And although it's not a nutrient necessarily, but I will very often recommend creatine monohydrate. It has been shown time and time again to be incredibly safe, and the research coming out around its use for supporting brain health as a neuroprotective agent, as a potential supplement, post concussion or post injury. There's just so much promising research out there, and with its safety profile, it's something that I very routinely recommend as well.
Hmm. Yeah. And for women, are you recommending the 5 grams a day or even less than that?
I'm recommending typically 3 to 5. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah.
kind of that standard 3 to 5.
Yep.
Hmm.
For anybody who's like vegan or vegetarian, women, I will usually recommend the higher 5 grams. But yeah, and it's again with the it the dosage for brain health and recovery is not super clear. We have seen recommendations as high as like 20 to 30 grams a day. I have not quite recommended that just for tolerance, although that has been shown to be pretty well tolerated. But the research in around creatine and brain health and again neuroprotection is it's evolving, but I'm still recommending that 5 grams for the most part.
Mhm. Yeah. Awesome. And if there was maybe one misconception about nutrition that you would love to correct that you see out there, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say, rather than focusing on things to remove and limit, I've had so many clients come to me with, you know, foods that they've restricted because of specific diets or recommendations coming from well-meaning, well-intended friends, family, healthcare professionals. Instead of focusing on restriction, focus on what you can add in. So focus on adding in, those leafy greens, um, olive oil, berries, fatty fish in a way that fits, into food preferences and routine. Um, but it doesn't have to be difficult or complicated. It could be really simple.
Yeah, I love it. And then I know you have another appointment to get to. So, where can people find you before we wrap up here?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram mainly. My account is nataliegavi.nutrition. And anyone interested in working together, just reaching out to chat, they can always email me, um, natalie@gavinutrition.com, or go to my website with more information and other ways to work together.
Super. Well, I'll add all of that in the notes here, and then I will see you at the summit that third weekend in March.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, have a great day.
You too.